In order to build a $99,000 ADU for one of my audience members, we're going to talk about some of the cheapest, most affordable ADU projects I've ever seen completed. And I mean really completed in the real world. I've seen the receipts, not like somebody bragged about doing it on the internet. Because I want to see what we can learn from those projects and apply to the 99K ADU. If you don't know what the 99K ADU project is, I'm trying to do a 5-figure ADU in one of the most expensive housing markets in the country, California. And I'm going to do it for one of the audience members. If you're finding this video and this is the first you're hearing of the 99K ADU project, you are in luck. You should subscribe and hit like and maybe check out the links in the description below so you can follow the whole journey. But in any case, let's start with the dream ADU. I tell a lot of people about this project because it's got so many of the hallmarks. It's literally one of the cheapest construction budgets I've ever seen, and all in, it came in at $110,000, and it's a beauty. It was a garage conversion where everything went right, and what that means is they got to keep the walls, the roof, and the foundation. Not all garage conversions are affordable, but the most affordable projects are often garage conversions. When you look at a garage conversion, it can be anywhere on a really wide spectrum. At the great end of the spectrum, where this project falls, it has a great foundation, not just a slab, but like footings. It's got good solid bones. It's got good walls. It's got a good roof, and it got to keep all of that stuff. The general footprint made sense for an ADU. In a tough conversion, you think you have a garage, it looks modern, but actually when you kind of do the shovel test, you check the foundation. There's just a slab. There's no footing, whatever the word is. That like where you pour a little bit extra concrete, rebar goes down there, really hooks it into the ground. So that's not a solid foundation for a residential structure. Maybe the walls seemed like they were good and they like had drywall, sheetrock on the inside, and you thought, oh, they're all good walls. But actually, when you pull that off, it's like there's no insulation, no wiring, there's no shear wall. Like these aren't suitable for a residential structure, and you have to end up tearing everything out and putting it back up. Or sometimes, even though the framing is good, the level of insulation you need for such a small space in California Energy Code requires you to put so much insulation in that you either have to use a really expensive type of spray-in insulation, or you need to widen the walls, which means sistering the framing and making it thicker so that you can put more insulation in, and it's a whole thing. It costs a bunch of money. You thought you had good walls, and you needed to spend a bunch of money anyway. And so you can kind of understand why sometimes, even though you have a garage structure, people end up tearing down the garage and starting over. It's a tear down and replace is the most affordable way to get where they're going. Not very eco-friendly, but that's what happens a lot of the time because it's wallet friendly. This garage conversion is on the good side of garage conversions, where they had everything right. They didn't need to do a ton of new work. And when you save the foundation, the walls, and the roof, you save tens of thousands of dollars. The other thing that was really cool is this is a nonprofit doing the ADU. So they got a lot of things donated. For example, the architect, Inspired ADUs, where I used to work, did everything for free. And that's amazing, right? They did the drawings, they submitted the permits, they helped with some of the interiors, and they didn't charge a penny for that.
We're at a project with the Living Room, a nonprofit up in Santa Rosa, helping to house homeless women and children. And we got invited in and donated our time to create plans for a 2-car garage conversion into a new house for a mom and her kids.
The GC worked at cost and found a lot of materials at cost. This was a dream project. It also worked with a very experienced accessory dwelling unit team that knows how to value engineer. So when you're doing an accessory dwelling unit, sometimes experience makes all the difference, right? And if you're working with a really experienced team that knows how to take the whole property into account, sometimes you can get some savings there too. This specific property actually had a house, a 2-car garage that was being converted, and a trailer in the backyard. The way that the ADU was originally designed, it was going to be a little too big, and it was going to run into some square footage maximums. But Carrie, the architect at Inspired ADUs, figured out this neat trick, which also ended up helping a lot with the lifestyle of the 3 units on his property. Instead of having a laundry room in the back of this ADU that was part of the ADU, that laundry room opens up to the backyard and is usable by all 3 units. It is unconditioned space, so it doesn't count toward the square footage of any of the habitations. And that means that the ADU got to fall under a certain square footage, which helped with some of the planning requirements, helped with some of the fees. It also doesn't have to be conditioned, which changes the cost of the actual square footage of that laundry room. And it's accessible to all 3 units. And so instead of needing independent laundry facilities for all 3 units, they're shared, which is actually a lifestyle improvement too. So it's kind of a win-win-win. And you get those wins when you work with an experienced team. There's also some things that made this project more expensive than like the perfect ideal project you could imagine. I'm not advocating for all ADUs to cost $99,000. In all likelihood, if you're out there actually getting bids, most projects in California, especially in NorCal, you're getting a bid that starts like $200,000, $300,000. If that is normal for your project, don't put things on pause because I'm doing this weird 99K trick shot, right? Learn from the videos and apply those lessons as you go through your project. But I'm not saying every ADU should cost 99K. That's not possible. So don't put your project on hold because of me. Feel free to share your information in the description below. I will reach out if I think you could achieve something very affordably, but don't put your project on hold because of me, okay? I think there's also ways that this project spent a bit more money than the bare minimum, and those are interesting to look at too, because it could have come out a little bit cheaper, but instead they made that investment, and I agree with the reasoning behind the investment. So in this square footprint, 2-car garage is like 450 square feet, right? They could have done one big open studio, right? And that's marginally less expensive. There's less interior framing, there are different egress requirements. So you could get away with a slightly cheaper project if it's one big room, right? What they wanted to do with the project, they had a really clear intent. And that intent guided their decision making to invest a little bit more and get a big return for that investment. In this specific case, it was a nonprofit called The Living Room. They're creating this ADU to help a single mother transition out of a shelter environment and back into independent facility, right? So a big part of living in a shelter environment is that you lose a lot of privacy. And creating these 2 bedrooms for the mother and a child made it so that was such a big lifestyle improvement and such a big part of moving out of the shelter that was really important to the ADU project. And so it's worth the marginal cost increase in their minds to do that. And even if you're not a nonprofit in that specific situation, you might be thinking about rental environment, right? And you might say, hey, if I'm creating a 2-bedroom versus a 1-bedroom, what is my difference there? And there's lots of market trends you can look at, but in a lot of areas, 1-bedrooms are going to attract younger tenants who tend to turn over more quickly. 2-bedrooms are much more likely to attract parents and long-term tenants who don't want to move as often. At least that's the experience of a lot of my clients. And then there's different rental rates for studio versus 1-bedroom versus 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom versus 2-bathroom. So you got to judge all this if you're creating it as a rental. Or maybe you're creating it for somebody you know and you just want to make the facility exactly what that person needs. Anyway, they invested a little bit of money. Obviously, it was worth it for the intent of the project, and it's an interesting thing to reflect. You don't always want to build the cheapest ADU possible. A couple other things that I won't belabor are that they did work with a general contractor, which drives costs, right? Because the contractor takes care of a lot of things and charges a margin. That was mitigated a little bit by the fact that it was a nonprofit, but there's still a person there who's spending time on the job, right? And then it's also in Santa Rosa, which is between the fires in 2017 and other challenges the city's faced. There's a lot of demand on construction labor in Santa Rosa and the surrounding area, so costs are high there, right? And that's something that didn't help this project budget. It's a $110,000 budget, and it is a 450 square foot ADU plus a laundry room that's a little over 50 square feet. So also, I've seen parts of the plan where it says JADU and parts of the plan where it says ADU. I'm pretty sure they got it in as a junior accessory dwelling unit, which also helped cut fees and cut some of the utilities requirements, but I'm not sure about that. I need to ask Carrie. Carrie, if you're watching this, comment. Was it a JADU or an ADU? And I think that's also part of the fun that we talked about around the square footage. By making it by making that laundry room a shared space, an unconditioned space, the JADU part was only 450 square feet, and the laundry room didn't contribute to it. But we should check. If you want to know more about some of the cheapest ADUs I've seen, let me know in the comments, and definitely check out the 99K project in the description below the video or by watching this playlist. He was blowing his lawn about 2 hours ago and he stopped, so I thought we were safe, but he's blowing his lawn again. Leaves fall on it. I get it.